In the first week of September 1914, the German army could see the rooftops of Paris. Scouts on horseback reported the Eiffel Tower on the horizon. The French government had already fled south. In Berlin, officers spoke of the war ending in weeks, exactly as the plan had promised. And then, in the space of a few days, along a river most of the world had never heard of, everything reversed. 2 million men would collide across 100 miles of farmland east of Paris. 500,000 of them would be killed or wounded. And the entire outcome, the 4 years of trenches, the gas, the mud, the lost generation that followed, would turn not on weapons, but on decisions. Choices made by exhausted men bent over maps, some of them wrong, some of them desperate, a few of them brilliant. These are 10 decisions from the opening of the Battle of the Marne, and how each one bent the course of the First World War. Number 10. The wrong turn toward Paris. The German war plan depended on one thing above all: speed. Sweep through Belgium, curl west around Paris, and crush the French army against its own border before Russia could mobilize in the east. But by early September, the commander of the German First Army, Alexander von Kluck, was tired, far ahead of his supply lines, and hungry to destroy the retreating French in front of him. So he made a decision. Instead of passing west of Paris as the plan demanded, he wheeled his army inward, to the southeast, passing east of the city to chase the enemy. It felt aggressive. It felt like finishing the job. What it actually did was turn the exposed flank of the entire German advance directly across the front of Paris and hand the French the one opening they needed. Number 9. The eyes over the city. In Paris, the military governor was an old soldier named Joseph Gallieni, called out of near retirement to defend the capital. On the 3rd of September, his reconnaissance aircraft and cavalry brought him strange news. The great German army that had been marching straight for Paris was no longer coming. Its columns were sliding away to the southeast, showing their side. Most commanders would have breathed relief that the city was spared. Gallieni saw something else. He saw a throat, exposed. He is remembered as saying the Germans had offered him their flank, and he made the decision that set everything in motion, not to defend, but to attack. Number 8. Turning an army that was running. This is the hardest decision on the list because it went against everything the French army had felt for a month. Since the fighting began, the French had done nothing but retreat, beaten at the frontiers, falling back day after day in the summer heat, morale bleeding out with every mile. The commander-in-chief, Joseph Joffre, a heavy, calm, unhurried man, had absorbed defeat after defeat without panic. Now, with Gallieni pressing him and the German flank hanging open, Joffre made the choice to stop the retreat and turn the entire army around to fight. On the 6th of September, he issued an order of the day that left no room for retreat. The time for looking back, he told them, was over. A soldier who could no longer advance must hold the ground he stood on and die where he stood rather than fall back. An army that had been running for its life was told to turn and charge. Number 7. Convincing the British to stay. There was a problem. In the center of the line, exactly where the German armies had left their fatal gap, sat the British Expeditionary Force. And the British were exhausted, bloodied, and deeply reluctant. Their commander, Sir John French, had seen his small professional army mauled in the opening battles and had been talking about pulling back to refit, out of the fight entirely. If the British withdrew, the hole in the German line could not be exploited, and the whole counterattack would collapse before it began. Joffre drove to British headquarters himself and made a personal appeal. The honor of France, he said, was at stake. The decision to keep the British in the line, advancing into the gap, kept the trap from falling apart. Number 6. Striking too soon on the Ourcq. The French Sixth Army, under Michel-Joseph Montgomery, was supposed to be the hammer that swung into von Kluck's exposed flank. But contact came early, along a small river called the Ourcq, and the attack opened before the whole line was ready. It was messy, premature, and it gave away the surprise. And yet that very mistake forced the crisis. Von Kluck could not ignore a French army driving into his side. The premature blow made the Germans react, and reacting was exactly what would tear their line apart. Number 5. Von Kluck pulls back to save his flank. Faced with Montgomery's attack biting into his right, von Kluck made a decision that was tactically sound and strategically fatal. He pulled 2 entire corps back north, away from the main battle, to swing them against the French Sixth Army. It worked. In the narrow sense, Montgomery was soon in serious trouble, nearly overwhelmed. But every step those German corps marched north opened the gap on von Kluck's other side wider. To win the fight in front of him, he tore his own army away from the army beside it. Number 4. The gap that decided everything. Here is the wound at the heart of the battle. As von Kluck shifted north to fight Montgomery, a space opened between his first army and von Bülow's second army beside it. That space grew to roughly 30 miles of thinly held ground, screened by little more than cavalry. 30 miles of open door in the middle of the German line, and directly in front of it stood the British and the French Fifth Army. The entire German plan for a quick victory now depended on the enemy failing to notice, or failing to dare, to walk through it. Someone was about to dare. Number 3. The taxis of the Marne. Montgomery's men on the Ourcq were near breaking, and there were no reinforcements close enough to march in time. So Gallieni, back in Paris, made one of the most famous improvised decisions in military history. He requisitioned the city's taxicabs, some 600 of them, lined them up, loaded them with soldiers, and sent them racing through the night to the front. Roughly 6,000 men rode to battle in Paris taxis, meters clicking, some drivers reportedly still expecting to be paid. In cold numbers, the reinforcement was small, but the meaning was enormous. A city had thrown its own streets into the fight, and word of it lit a fire under an army that had spent a month in retreat. Number 2. Foch attacks while he is losing. Further along the line, in the drowned marshes of Saint-Gond, the French Ninth Army under Ferdinand Foch was being pounded. His right was bending. His center was giving way. By every rule of war, it was a moment to fall back and save what remained. Foch made the opposite decision. He ordered an attack from the very sector that was collapsing, gambling that the Germans in front of him were as spent as his own men. The message history remembers from him captures the madness and the nerve of it. Hard pressed on the right, center yielding. Situation excellent. I attack. Whether or not he ever phrased it so cleanly, he did attack. And the German line, stretched to its limit, held its breath, and began to bend. Number 1. The order to retreat. By the 8th of September, the German High Command, far to the rear, had lost its grip on the battle. The chief of the General Staff, Helmuth von Moltke, nerves failing, could not see clearly what was happening at the front. So he sent a single staff officer, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hensch, forward with authority to act in his name. Hensch drove from army to army along the German line, and when he reached the edge of that 30-mile gap and saw British and French troops moving into it, he made the decision that ended the German dream of a short war. He authorized the retreat. The order rippled outward, and the entire German right wing began to pull back to the north, to the heights above a river called the Aisne. The men who had seen the rooftops of Paris turned around and marched away from it, and they would not come that close again for the rest of the war. That retreat is where the world you think of when you think of the First World War was born. The Germans dug in on high ground above the Aisne. The Allies could not push them off. Both sides began stretching their lines sideways, each trying to find an open flank, digging as they went, north and north again, all the way to the sea. When there was no more ground to maneuver around, there was only ground to burrow into. The trenches that resulted would not move meaningfully for 4 years. Millions would die in the mud between them for a few hundred yards at a time. The Battle of the Marne saved Paris and wrecked the German plan for a quick victory, and in doing so, it locked two great alliances into exactly the long, grinding two-front war that everyone had sworn would never happen. 500,000 men fell in a single week to make it so. And every one of those years of slaughter traces back to a handful of choices made in a handful of days, by tired men reading maps by candlelight, who could not yet know that the decisions in front of them would bury a generation.